In this video, I'm going to tell you how these desserts were made. I'm even going to show you the recipes, but they're going to be jumbo-sized recipes. My aim with this lesson is to give you a sense of how a commercial bakery produces holiday cakes in bulk. I'm packing a lot of stuff in this video, so here are the timestamps in case you want to skip ahead or review certain parts. So at this wholesale bakery where I once worked as a pastry chef, we made a few different kinds of heart cakes for Valentine's Day. The chocolate cherry cheesecake, the flourless chocolate decadence, and the white chocolate raspberry mousse cake, all in the same mold. I believe we sold around 1,000 of these cakes per Valentine's season, but we only owned 45 of the heart molds. We had to start at the very beginning of January and bake a round of 45 cakes every day. We froze the inventory so it would stay fresh. If you're not yet familiar with my method for freezing cakes, then go here. If that button doesn't work for you, I've also got a link below. The way it worked was we covered the bottom of each mold with parchment paper and then 2 layers of aluminum foil. We couldn't bake directly on the aluminum foil because that's not food safe. Metal leaches out of foil when you do that. So the parchment paper touched the batter and the aluminum foil acted like a makeshift base for the molds. The base of these cheesecakes were made from chocolate cake scraps. You know when you bake a cake and it domes on the top? Well, at that bakery we leveled off the cake tops, but we collected them in buckets, which were then sealed and frozen. As soon as we had a bunch of buckets worth of tops, we defrosted them and spread the cake out on sheet pans, crumbled it up, and toasted it in the oven at a low temperature until it was dry. Then we processed the crumbs in a Roku, which is a commercial grade food processor. Once the crumbs were fine, we used them to garnish the outsides of cakes. We also combined them with butter and sugar to make a crumb crust, just the same way you would make a crust with graham crackers, except the proportion of ingredients was different. It made for a really yummy and crunchy crust and was an excellent way to utilize cake scraps. The cherries that lined the bottom of this cheesecake were sour cherries that came pitted and frozen. They had a nice, strong cherry flavor. The cheesecake was just an ordinary cheesecake batter that got baked in a shallow hot water bath. After baking, we froze the cakes and then pushed them out of the molds. The tops got drizzled with melted white chocolate. Then they were garnished with chocolate-dipped maraschino cherries, which had first been drained from their syrup and allowed to dry on towels for several days. If they weren't first dried like that, they'd be too wet to dip in chocolate, and their juices would weep all over the tops of the cakes. The mini version of this cake was made in the exact same way, except we baked them in aluminum ring molds like this. We did a lot of individual desserts this way. It was a tedious job, but we had hundreds of these kinds of molds, so we could make big batches and freeze them. For mousse cakes, we lined the molds with acetate that we taped into a ring. The acetate made it easy to remove the cakes from the molds. It stayed on the cakes, sealing and protecting their sides until they were ready to be served. Then it was peeled off. So this flavor of cake was our bestseller. It was dense like fudge. It was just a simple recipe consisting only of 3 ingredients. 1 super high quality dark chocolate with a 50 to 60% cacao content. 2 melted butter. And 3 eggs. Just like the cheesecakes, we also baked these in a hot water bath, then froze them. Once we had a couple hundred of them on hand, we spent the afternoon glazing them with this chocolate glaze recipe. The sides were garnished with a kind of chocolate called vermicelli. Vermicelli looks like something we have in America called sprinkles or jimmies, but it's not anything like the American version. Vermicelli is real chocolate, it tastes good, and it's a lot finer than sprinkles. So the trick to doing the spray of hearts was a matter of temperature and timing. All around the edges of the tables, I laid out about 30 hearts, but I only worked on 3 at a time. 3 was just right because by the time I finished glazing number 3, number 1 would be ready. When I say ready, I mean the glaze would be in that short window of time when it has stopped moving but it's still soft and wet on top. That's when you can inlay designs with white chocolate. Here's an example of me doing it with royal icing so you can see what I mean. In this case I added drops, then dragged the tip of a skewer through them to make them heart-shaped. With chocolate, this technique works best when the temperature and consistency of the white chocolate matches the temperature and consistency of the glaze. and it's the kind of thing you get better at with practice. We glazed all the cakes directly on the countertops, not on racks like you sometimes see in tutorials. The rack just creates another thing to clean, so the extra glaze just pooled around the base of the cakes. Then, once it was semi-firm, not too soft, but not all the way hard, we picked up the cakes and cleaned around the bottom of them with an offset spatula, then patted the vermicelli around the base to clean up the spatula marks. This is a bakery trick, to add a garnish around the base or sides of a cake. It cuts down on your decorating time because it conceals the parts that are most likely to have marks. It also just looks nice. By the time we got done completing all 30 of the cakes, the glaze on the tabletops would be nice and firm. So we scraped it all up using a bowl scraper and put it into a bowl so it could be melted down and reused again. Then, without cleaning the countertops, because they're just gonna get covered in more glaze anyway, we laid down another 30 cakes and did the same thing over and over again until there was no more chocolate glaze. The bottom layer of these hearts was made from vanilla sponge that was cut out from sheet cakes. That was topped with frozen raspberries. Then the molds were filled with the raspberry mousse that was flavored with raspberry puree and tinted pink with a little bit of red food coloring. Raspberry and strawberry mousse is never quite as pink as you expect it to be, so it helps to add a little bit of food coloring to evoke the flavor of berry and entice the eye. If you would prefer a more organic version of food coloring, a little bit of mashed beet works well. Not a boiled beet because the water pulls the color out, but a roasted beet that has retained its color. So these mousse cakes were frozen and then popped out of their molds and then topped with a white chocolate ganache and then garnished with pink chocolate hearts on a bed of white chocolate shavings. This week's giveaway is open to anyone in the world who runs a bakery business or is planning on running a bakery business. It's going to be a free advanced copy of an ebook that I have coming out soon. The working title is 120 Building Blocks for Your Bakery Business. I'm due to complete the manuscript this week, so as soon as I get it back from my editor and have a beta version ready, the person who wins this prize will be the first to receive a copy of it prior to publication. If you would like to win this prize, all you have to do is answer the following question. What is the biggest challenge that you face in your baking business? I want to make sure that I'm covering all the topics that matter to you, so thanks in advance for helping make sure I don't miss anything. Well, some of you shared some really cool pics of your Valentine's work last week. Yariana Wertz is working on some cute cookies. Kristen Demakia has got all kinds of cool things going on at Little Devil Cupcakery. Linda Nodden from Mainly Wedding Cakes made these gorgeous cookies, which is not surprising because everything she does is beautiful. And the winner of the FMM Cutters is Maria W. from Dolchalicious Bake Shop. Congratulations. Okay, so happy Valentine's Day. I love you. Thank you for tuning into these vlogs and for commenting. Your comments really keep me going. Have an awesome week.